All right, let's get to it. So thank you for those of you that are joining us. Thank you to our four panelists. I'm going to introduce you guys in a second here. But I really appreciate you guys spending your afternoon here with us. And hopefully we provide some content to you so that we all learn from it. I know I'm going to learn a lot. I learn a lot from every single one of you guys every single time we talk. So I'm really excited about this. As far as other logistics go, after we finish up here this weekend, I'm going to upload all of our podcasts onto YouTube, and I'll be posting up the link on social media and sending it out. So we'll be able to go through the recording again for those of you that missed it or want to watch it again. But first and foremost, my name is Matt Marsh. I'm an assistant baseball coach now at UMBC, formerly at University of Maine, and I'm really excited to have these guys on with us. Burke, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Conor Burke. I'm an assistant baseball coach and recruiting coordinator at Dartmouth College. This was my first year at Dartmouth. The previous 4 years I spent at the University of Maine. Graduated from Queens College in New York City. New York resident, but excited to be here and talking with you, Matt.
Awesome. Thank you, Burke. Brooksy?
Yeah, Joe Brooks, assistant baseball coach at the University of Pennsylvania. This was also my first year at UPENN, and spent the previous 2 years at Penn State Abington. Played ball at Rutgers Camden, and South Jersey native myself, so not too far from home.
Awesome. Thank you, Brooks. Anthony?
What's up, guys? I'm Anthony Spataro. I'm an assistant baseball coach at Siena College, going into my 4th year. And I'm an Albany resident myself, and I graduated from Brockport in 2016.
Thanks for coming on, Anthony. Now, this is going to be a lot of fun. All of these have been a great time. We've learned a lot already. Many of these topics that we're going through today are very broad, and we're going to kind of cover a lot of things. And the reason why I'm excited about that is I'm sitting here with 3 guys on this panel right now that know a lot about training infielders, have trained outfielders well too, and have worked with hitters. So, we're going to kind of dive in a bunch of different directions today, and I'm excited for what we get out of it. So my first question, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around. I'm going to ask some questions here. We'll hit everybody. So, we'll go around, and then we'll dive into conversation if we see fit. And if not, we'll move on to the next one. At the end, if you're sitting here live on this podcast and you'd like to throw a question in the chat, we'll do a Q&A at the end there. So my first question, I'll start off with you, Burke. How do you measure success of a position player as a defender? And this could be an infielder, this could be an outfielder, just ways that, you look back at your guys and say, hey, this is what a good player does.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, like the broad stroke is like the guys that make routines consistently. The guys that can make the most routine plays is a great way to measure success, right? And then you have to measure each guy's skill level too. Mm-hmm. So your center fielder, you're going to judge him more on how he goes and gets balls in the gap. Your right fielder, you may judge a little bit more on how he's throwing accurately. But for an outfielder, I think another big point of success in measuring is how well they're able to keep the double play ball intact, right? So runner on first, ball in the gap, this guy's going first to third. Are they getting it into second, or are they trying to get a guy at third? And next thing you know, play balls out. Infielders, I really think a big piece of success with infielders is just making the routine. Like, that's a great way to measure defense success. And then catchers, they have their own probably lane as far as what you would say success is. Me personally, I'm going to be a guy that is receiving over throwing any day of the week. I think a lot of catching comes down to making your pitcher kind of feel comfortable and be able to steal a strike here or there. And, having a guy that is behind, they're confident in being able to bounce a breaking ball too with 2 strikes is a big thing. So it's kind of broad stroke, but I would definitely, the big thing with measuring success of defender is making the routine play.
I love it. A lot of great content right away. Brooksy, what do you got to follow up on that?
Yeah, he said a lot of things going to cover, and I think that's going to happen a lot today. But yeah, I think making the routine play is huge because, especially in the infield, it happens so often. there's times that you might have an athletic shortstop who can go make the play on the backhand side, a real hard one. But if they can't make the play that's right at them, there's not much use for that. I think it's different by position, obviously. With outfielders, I think throwing accurately is huge. We kind of touched on right there, keeping the double play in order. The way I measure our guys is, can you throw accurately? Can you keep the double play in order? Do you make smart decisions? It's not necessarily, pen to paper, a charting thing that you can measure, but especially the guys in the outfit. I mean, we had 2 freshmen that were kind of platooning in the beginning of the year out in left field. And, I think those are conversations that you have to have with them early on. It's, are we making the right decisions in the outfield? Do we know when to dive toward the line or to the gap? How many outs there are for that situation to occur? Where am I going with the ball? Especially if there's a guy on second, he's going to score easily. Am I just, airmailing it to home? Eliminating the extra bag. Infield wise, obviously the routine play. I think if guys move efficiently with their feet, if they're under control, I think that's a big thing that you'll see. Good infielders are under control with their feet. I think, those are the types of guys who see a lot of success in the infield. Not only fielding the ball, but throwing it. You want to put yourself in a good position to throw. And catching, I think receiving is a big thing. You want the pitcher to want to throw to you. We want to, get strikes for our guys. They got to be comfortable bouncing, breaking pitches, everything we kind of just went over. Receiving, I think catchers should spend part of their time doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely an important thing. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Brooksy. Anthony, what do you got to add? Anything to follow up on that?
I got it's all really good stuff. The only thing I got just for the outfielders, just something I look at a lot with our guys in the outfield is if they're getting their body in the position to make a good throw to a certain base when the ball gets hit in their direction. So, you got a guy on third, ball gets hit in the left, our outfielders getting behind the ball, catching the ball with 2 hands, making a good throw home. And then other than that, infield, the same thing with, these guys. Just making the routine plays. Same thing, I think, just being a really good Division I infielder, best thing, you got to have a clean feet. And then if you have clean feet, everything pretty much takes care of itself.
Awesome. And I think we're all talking about the same thing here. We're talking, as outfielders, we're talking about the value of 90 feet. And, Burke, you kicked us off with that, and everybody, pretty much agrees, and I agree too. If we're giving up, 90 feet on the backside, frequently, it makes it that much more difficult on our pitcher. It makes it that much more difficult on our team. So I think that that's a really important thing, is just conserving 90 feet whenever we can, and having an understanding of making good decisions, and knowing when to be aggressive with our throws, and knowing when to be aggressive when we're laying out for a ball as well too, understanding the situation, understanding the scoreboard. Love that we're talking about the routine play, and many great infield guys have talked about that, and it's something that I believe in as well too. And not only making the routine play, but also going back to understanding the importance of 90 feet as well too. Making that play where not being afraid to lay out for a ball and conserve 90 feet and keep the ball in the infield and keep that runner on second from scoring. Having that understanding as well too, I think, is very important to stress with the infielders as well too. But a lot of great stuff right away to start off, and I'm excited in the direction this is already going. We're going to shift gears a little bit, so we're going to kind of just broad stroke everything and just kind of go generally, from defensive stuff to offensive stuff, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper kind of as we go. But let's shift gears on over to offensive stuff. How would you measure success for an offensive player? And this could be something mechanical. This could be something as far as approach goes. This could be something overall offensive philosophy. Give me something that you would measure success for an offensive player. Brooks, you want to start us?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good question. Definitely can go a number of ways. For me, I think having quality at bats, I think that's a good way to measure success, kind of take the stats out of it and hits and all that. It's going to be different for everybody in terms of success. Obviously, quality at bats and tough at bats. And when I say tough at bats, it could even be, with 2 strikes, if you put a good take on a pitch, right? a number of things that would qualify as a tough at bat or quality at bat. It depends kind of how your team or how you run your offense, how you define that. Something that's big for me and for us in our club is playing team offense.
Mhm.
I think that's huge, and I think it's different for everybody in that lineup. You know, you're going to have guys who can do different things. You're going to have some guys who can run. You're going to have some contact guys. You're going to have some guys who can drive balls in the gap and are there kind of to drive runs in. And I think individually you can measure success that way, and I think it ends up measuring it for your lineup and your whole club. If they're able to do the job that they're there to do. You know, there's guys who don't run as well, and, you know, they've got some pop and are hitting in kind of the middle of the order, and they're there to drive runs in. You know, necessarily, you know, kind of slap the ball the other way and take it 90 feet at a time. You know, there's some guys at the top and the bottom of the lineup who can do that. But I think if you can put that together and each guy can kind of hone their role individually and you can measure that, I think you end up having a pretty good offense at the end of the day.
I love it. I love it. So, you know, you're talking about team-wide success, but you're also talking about individual success relative to that player's identity. I really like that. That's awesome. Anthony, what do you got to piggyback off of that?
I'll hit off the approach. I mean, when I'm looking at guys or our guys in general, you know, I'm just want them to be attacking fastballs early in the count. You know, in baseball, I feel like the most damaged the count is 0-0. I mean, the NCAA, those 6-4-3 charts, we get them every spring. You know, it'll have an average of every single count, and the highest count or the highest average you see is that 0-0 count. You know, so that's kind of how I judge, you know, run everything here at Siena is just we're attacking early in the count. We're trying to attack fastballs. And then another thing I think that's important is just the two-strike approach. You know, every single one of our guys has a different two-strike approach, but, you know, there's two things that are non-negotiable. You have to choke up and you have to change your stride, whether your stride foot goes up or down or if you go no stride at all. And then, you know, something else I think is really important. I think it's, you know, it's a minor adjustment, but I think it's really important is different swings that you have with two strikes. You know, when you get to two strikes, you're just trying to put the ball in play and just try to come up with a productive out. You know, that's really all I kind of got. That's
Awesome. Awesome. Burke, bring us home on that.
Yeah. So I could build off a lot of that there. I mean, Brooks, you made it great with quality at bats. I think that's how all of us kind of measure with that broad stroke, right? Is those quality at bats, who's successfully executing them, right? Because it's a team built statistic, pretty much quality at bat. Mm-hmm. And then from there, it's filling your role, right? I think that was another great point is you have all role fillers, right? You have guys who are movers, you have guys who are producers, you have guys who are get-oners. Like, so everybody is built into a certain role, and how well they're executing that role is a big thing. And then from the bases perspective, like not everybody's going to steal bags, but everybody can get dirt ball reads. Mm-hmm. So that's a big piece of the offense is getting dirt ball reads and stealing 90 feet. You know, it's all based on hustle and instinct. So anything that doesn't require much talent to be measured, I think is a big thing. And that's definitely dirt ball reads. And then from like a mechanic swing perspective, it's guys that could get off their A swing all the time. I think that's a big thing. If guys are on time and getting off their A swing, be pretty good. And then obviously pitch selection, right? You're not chasing things. So for us, like it's, was I on time? Was it a good pitch to hit? And then I could get on to mechanics. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that goes into your approach. We're always on time for a fastball. That's how our approaches are very simple. It's where in the field is the fastball going and what fastball are you on time for? With two strikes, we don't necessarily choke up and change our strides. And that's just more of a personal belief where if your A swing isn't good enough to get off with two strikes, you probably shouldn't have that swing. If it's not good enough to consistently make contact and compress a baseball and really strike it consistently, then we need to go back to the board and start redesigning that swing a little bit.
And I love that you mentioned the checklist, and that's something that I learned from you, you know, directly 3 years ago, and I love that. I mean, it all circles back, you know, coming from my background of being a travel coach and a high school coach prior to, and spending a lot of the time in the cage. You know, my first viewpoint as a hitting coach was mechanics first. And I think, so many kids have that belief. But that's just not the case at all. If you really want to build a successful hitter, and I love that you brought up that point of being on time first. Are you swinging at good pitches? And then we'll jump into mechanics, and that's really good stuff. My point of view from a macro scale is, at the end of the day, guys, like, runs win games, and we all kind of said that in our own way. Burke, you're talking about, making dirt ball reads and advancing 90 feet. And Brooks, you're talking about, having quality at bats. And we're all kind of hitting on that front. But I think, if we're able to get on base, we're able to get to second base on our own, whether it's hitting a double, stealing a base, making a dirt ball read, finding a way to get to second base, we give our team a chance to score runs. And I think that that's a huge thing. And it also comes back to the things that you guys are talking about too, and having that identity. Am I a mover? Am I a producer? How can I help my team score runs? Because we've all seen games where we put up 10 hits and the other team puts up 6 hits and we lose 8-2, or whatever it might be. We have to be able to score runs, and I think that's what an offensive message really, in my opinion, is. But from kind of going on the smaller scale, I'm right there with you, Berkey. Just trying to be on time to see the pitch frequently, and be on time in the hitting zone as well too. Are we building a swing that allows us to be adjustable? Are we building a swing that allows that individual the best chance to barrel up baseballs consistently? So my next question to you guys, and we can go a lot deeper into this, but we'll start with you, Burke, and then we'll circle back around. If you had a couple teaching points to share with an offensive player, we're going to go a little bit deeper right now, and you can go in any direction you want with this. Feel free to. What would they be? What are a couple teaching points that you could share with an offensive player?
Yeah, so like a broad thing is just control what you can control, right? So you can control what pitch you're going at by controlling the strike zone. You can control whether you're on time or not. You can control your hustle. So they're like real big things. Like for me, you can be swinging at a good pitch. If you're not on time, it doesn't matter. You can have the prettiest, best mechanical swing in the world. If you're not on time, it doesn't matter, right? I think Anthony, hit the nail on the head. Like, get on time for the fastball and hit it. Like, the fastball, that's a big, big thing from an offensive side of the baseball, is get on time, hit it hard, let it go from there. I mean, that's our teaching point, and that everybody's going to be different. Like, just because I'm telling Anthony to do something doesn't mean I'm going to tell Joe to do it, right? We're all built differently, and we all have different roles to fill. So understand your role and get on time and control you control. I think that's a big thing right there.
Awesome. Brooks, what do you got?
Yeah, he hit on the nail on the head there with control, what you can control. That's huge. For me, to kind of start it off, it's have a routine. I think the routine's huge. Not only does it kind of build confidence for you, but it's something you can go back to when things aren't going as good as you want to go. I think that directly ties into the mental side. I think a lot of good hitters, if you ever look at good hitters who have a lot of success, they have a routine. They stick to their routine, and they've got a good mental approach. They're consistent, whether they're, seeing success or they're kind of, I hate using the word slump, but things aren't going so well for them. Their attitude and their approach is consistent. So having that routine is huge. And just quality at bats, focus on hitting the ball as hard as you can. I think it's funny how it works. You'll see the guys who have the most consistent hard contact over time, always stats are there at the end of the year. They usually have the most success. So, that's something you can work on every day, is just consistent, hard quality contact. I think that's huge. It takes, there's obviously a time and a place to work on mechanics and work on swing and all that. But that's something you can kind of work on every day that takes that side out of it and the thinking side out of it to keep it simple and just kind of focus it on, squaring up the baseball as much as I can. So.
I love it. Anthony, what do you got?
Yeah, Joe, hit that perfectly. I feel like the one thing I'm telling the guys all the time is just worry about hitting strikes hard. Who cares? We're not necessarily worried about what your launch angle is or any of that. Just hit strikes hard. That's all we really care about. If you're hitting strikes hard, you're going to find a gap somewhere. And even if you're making loud outs, there's no problem with that. Same thing agreeing with Joe. I think routine is huge. Even if you're struggling, same thing with Joe. I hate talking about slump, but, say stuff's not going your way. If you can at least stick to your routine, you're still building off something, and something else will come from that. And then something he hit on too that I really liked is just having a really good mental approach. Something I think that's really important is just, flushing, one pitch. Like you miss a fastball, you take a fastball, or, you foul off a fastball, or you put a good swing on a fastball and you hit it foul down the line. The next pitch is just as important, to accomplishing something for your team.
Awesome. I love that we're talking about the mental side and Burke, you kicked it off great, talking about controlling what we can control, talking about quality at bats, talking about all these types of things, and the mental state. The first time I listened to Steve Springer, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever it might have been, thinking about statistics got me thinking about how, in statistics, we have the law of dependence, and we have law of independence. And you see a lot of good hitters, if they want to be consistent on the field, they need to be consistent in their mindset. They need to be independent of what goes on. That's something that I talked about with our guys this year, that, if something doesn't go your way in an at-bat, it shouldn't be taking you out of your at-bat. Just because you have 1 strike, 2 strikes, no strikes, your mindset needs to be independent. If you're 0 for 3 or 3 for 3, you need to be going up there the same way. And that's easier said than done. But it goes back to what you were talking about, Brooks, and having and Anthony, and having a routine. Are you able to center yourself frequently? If we want consistent results, we have to be consistent with our mind, but kind of going into a mechanical thing as well too. We have to be consistent in the spot that we get to in order to see the pitch, and that comes back to timing as well too. Do we have anything that we'd like to add on this? Any points that kind of, as we're talking right now, you want to kind of go forward with?
Yeah. I think that like what Brooks brought up with routine is so important because it allows guys to be confident, right? Like we talk to our guys about like having a cornerback mentality. Mm-hmm. A cornerback on the field, they get burned 3 times in a row, but knock a ball down, and they're the best player on earth, right? They're Deion Sanders. They're locked down. So like we talk to our hitters about like having that kind of cornerback mentality. So every play is new, every pitch is new. Like trying to be as confident as you can in every single one.
Love it.
Hey, real quick, did you bring up that cornerback analogy because I'm an Eagles fan?
Nope.
I hope not.
No, but I'm a Giant fan, so.
Awesome. Anything to add on this right here as far as teaching points go before we move on? All right, let's shift gears back to defensive stuff. What are some teaching points that you want your infielders to know, and what are some ways that you'd reinforce those teaching points? And these, again, they could be, general. They could be more specific. They could be whatever you like and whatever direction you want to go in. Brooks, let's start with you.
Yeah, of course. I think Anthony hit on it earlier, and I loved it. If your feet are in order, it's going to take care of everything else. I talked to our infield guys, and even over the years when I've worked with infielders, if you go back, and I don't have the direct numbers on this, but if you go back over time and look at errors over a season, I'd like to say that at least 75% of them are throwing errors. There's time that you can work on fundamentals. I think that goes without saying in the infield. But if you're active with your feet and you put yourself in a good position to throw, it's going to take care of a lot of things. So I think footwork's important. Something I love to do with guys is have guys field fungos or take fungos in their turfs on the field. I think, on a dirt, on a natural surface, I think it forces them to kind of stay under control. A lot of guys want to kind of move too quick. When you talk about having good feet with guys, sometimes, they get into almost the agility ladder mindset, and they got to move quick and efficiently. And sometimes it's better for some guys to slow down. You'll see right away when the guys take fungos in the turfs, if a guy's moving too quick, he looks like he's on ice skates out there. So it forces them to kind of be under control and put themselves in a good position to throw. I think a lot of guys have talked about it before, but the blocked and random training, I think it's big. You can kind of sit there and work, if a guy has a weakness on his backhand side or forehand or maybe balls in the hole or double plays, whatever it may be, you can sit there and kind of drill that. which is good. And then, moving from that, I think it's important to randomize it and kind of put him in game-like situations so he can kind of transfer all the work that he did in the block session. I think that's huge, and I think we've seen him doing that. A lot of guys have been able to transfer it. It's important. If you can't transfer it to the game-like situation, it doesn't really mean anything. So it's important to kind of do that.
Awesome. Burke, what do you got to add?
Well, I think with infielders, the biggest thing for us is just play good catch, right? It's building on what Brooke said. And where we start off with that is playing catch, right? Like we are literally going out there with intent every time that we throw a baseball. It goes to like when our guys are even just like getting the balls and ground balls and flipping them into the pitchers. If you're one hopping, you make sure that's a good one hop in the chest.
Mm-hmm.
If you're hitting them on the fly, you make sure it's in the chest. So anytime we throw a baseball, there's intent behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So our throwing program is all based upon that, right? And when we're on our way in, we're practicing different kinds of throws, right? And I did this when I was at Maine. It wasn't every day, but it was like every other day, we'd have some kind of throwing variation where it would either be on the run or quarterback throws or circle throws. Like we're always doing something to practice throwing. And it's one thing that I still harp on is just playing good catch. If you play good catch, you're going to win baseball games.
Mm-hmm.
That's really all it comes down to.
Love it. Anthony, what do you got to add here?
Same thing, just building off what Conor said, we're same thing, playing catch with intent. Our whole throwing program also same thing is based on that. Something that we do is like with our everydays, start on our knees, you do bare hand, and then you go to your glove, work on forehand, straight up, and your backhand. You do both the funnel or you separate your hands. You got to work on both. I feel like there's no proper way to take the ball out of your glove. You're either going to separate and break apart, or you're going to funnel it to your belly button. We do a lot of, I'll do it with a guy, like, I feel like he's bringing his head up. I like hat in the mouth. So like a guy will put the brim of his hat in his mouth, and it forces him to keep his head down and see the ball all the way into his glove. And then I love doing step unders with a hurdle. So the ball gets hit, they step under a hurdle on a track, and it kind of gets their chest down and it gets their body down in a good feeling position. And then I love ladders. I mean, ladders, just the same thing, get your hips going, get your feet going, and gets you in a good feeling position.
That's a lot of really good stuff. And, Burke, I've seen you do a couple of those as well too, firsthand, and I love it. I love it. That's some good stuff there, Anthony. You guys have hit on a lot of different things, and we had some of these conversations earlier this week on our infield conversation. But just one or two things to add in addition to having good feet, playing good catch, staying low to the ground. Where we're transferring, in addition to and being consistent with our transfers, is just being able to use our feet to create hops. I mean, Burke, the other day you were talking about rhythm, and you and Jimmy were talking about that, and I love that. I mean, just being able to be rhythmic, see the hop, create either a long or a short hop, and just make the play that much easier for yourself. And that's what you see a lot of the best infielders really, really do and do consistently. And then that allows the feet to then get to work, and then the arm kind of just follows from there, kind of in sequence. But if you're able to create hops with your feet, you make things a whole lot easier on yourself. Does anybody have anything to add before we move on to talking a little bit about outfield play? Okay. Now this is interesting, and I was actually excited about this because, all four of us really have an infield background, so to speak, in some degree, right? Burke, you've been an infield coach for a while. Brooksy, you were an infield coach first and then transitioned out to the outfield. Anthony, talking to you, you were an infield coach and transitioned out in the outfield. And, now I've coached with the outfielders, and I'm shifting back to the infielders now with UMBC. I just want to hear, in that transition, what commonalities, what things in common have you noticed between training an infielder and training an outfielder? I mean, we see so many infielders that, end up transitioning out to the outfield. How would you prepare that infielder to make that change? Are there similarities? Are there differences? And what exactly are they in your opinion? Burke, you want to start?
Yeah. So I'll just talk firsthand from transitioning in junior college from an infielder to an outfielder when I just found out I wasn't good enough to stay in the infield with those guys. But the big thing for me was how important the pre-steps are, right? Like pre-steps for an outfielder are equally as important as an infielder because you have to be able to be finished moving when that ball's right entering contact zone. Right? Initial read, both infield and outfield, is so important that we have our feet on time for that, or at least our body on time for that. You know, some don't necessarily move their feet, but they get a little kind of rock and then see their eyes. So I think that's a big thing in the transition is to make sure that, you know, when you go from infield to outfield, there's a lot of downtime. I think there's a real reason why a lot of outfielders are strange guys that grew up all their life because they're out there talking to himself and a lot of that dead time, right? But when your feet are on time, like good things happen. So being able to lock in. So like you talk about like that focus circle, right? Fielders, outfielders in between the pitch, you have a focus circle where you step out of, you know, check yourself, take a breath, and then step back in that focus circle, and you got to be ready to go. I think it's even more important for an outfielder just because there is so much less action. And then make sure you're somewhere every play. You know, guys transitioning to the outfield, they forget about all the little things of backing up bases in certain situations. There's always somewhere to be. Even if it's a routine play, there's somewhere to be, whether you're umbrelling the infield, anticipating a bad throw, and getting to a position for another throw. So you got thinking steps ahead.
Awesome. Brooks, what do you got to build off of that?
Yeah, that was a lot of great stuff there to definitely agree with. There's always somewhere to be. We actually spend a lot of time with our guys, you know, backing up bases, even if it's, you know, during team bunt defense or somewhere where you can kind of get in closer and go through with the guys where they should be every play. I can also speak from personal experience as a guy who, you know, kind of spent his whole life in the infield and transitioned, you know, later in my college career to the outfield. And some of the best advice that I ever got was just go out there and be an athlete. All the outfield guys, whenever they get a chance to go play the infield, whether if it's a guy just coming in for ground balls during BP, they love being out there. But there's something about when an infielder heads out there, he's a little passive, right? Number one thing I think you can tell them is just go be an athlete. You know, we've got enough athletes on the team. They're there for a reason. So go out and do what you can do and make the plays. I think it's, you know, and we'll touch on this as we get into outfield play a little later in this, but, you know, keeping it simple as much as, you know, secure the ball, catch the ball, throw accurately, and run good routes. You know, the more time you spend out there, the more experience you're going to get and the more comfortable you're going to be. But Marsh, you touched on this a little earlier, you know, be aggressive out there. You're out there because, you know, you can make the plays and we have confidence in that. But if you're going to make a mistake, I'd rather you do it aggressively than passively. And I think that's at any position. So I think it's important to kind of, you know, if you're going to give them some advice or prepare them, just kind of say, hey, go out there and go get it. You know, that's what you're out here to do. And, you know, be aggressive and be the athlete that we know you can be out there. So
I love it. Not being afraid to fail. Anthony, what do you got?
I mean, that Joe kind of pretty much said it all. I mean, just one thing. I mean, maybe just, you know, the outfielders, you know, hit your cuts. You know, as you know, embarrassing as it might be, if you can't make that throw from deep center to throw somebody out of the base, you know, just hit your cut and get it to an infielder. You know, just it keeps other plays in order. You know, it keeps people from advancing 90 feet. And then I think with an outfielder, you know, you got to pay a little bit more attention to reading the swings. I feel like you have a lot more stuff to worry about in the outfield. You got a lot more ground to cover than you would as an infielder. You know, so just paying attention to, you know, a guy's swing, right? If he's late, you might shift yourself to the opposite gap a little bit more. If he's early, on time, you might shade yourself a little bit more to the pole gap. You know, just trying to cut down distance.
Awesome. You know, I think you guys all covered a lot of this stuff, but you know, first and foremost, you know, the point of always having somewhere to be on the field. I mean, as an outfielder, we're the last line of defense out there. It's us, and there's always somewhere to be in any position on the field, and we all know that. I did a study this fall for our outfielders on, you know, just frequency of plays and how often they really happen. And I think it was 1% of the plays of the year end up being a backup play. And you could look at that and say, well, only 1% of the time does that actually come into effect. But that 1% of the time could be the difference between winning a game that takes us to a championship, winning a championship, go to the conference tournament, or whatever it might be. So it does come up, and we want to be ready for that 1%. If we want to be 1% better, we have to take the easy things of just being in the right position, and that's really a choice. I love that you talk about Burke being on time, because I think that's such a thing that, infielders, you see the big, hop steps sometimes, you see, the Pedroia step, you see all these things. And, I saw it this winter when I was watching Darren Fenster. He was talking about Jackie Bradley Jr. and his touch steps pre-pitch, his pre-pitch footwork. And he has the hop going on, not as significant, of course, as like a Pedroia hop step or prep step, but he has a little bit of hop going, a little bit of rhythm going, and there's different variations of however you want to do it. But sometimes I feel like that gets lost with the outfielders, because it's easy to, as Burke, you said right away, it's easy to drift in and out and lose focus out there. And I think that's something to really stay on top of. Footwork can really be similar in some ways and different in others out there. But, and looking at a lot of the ways guys pro step, they're still replacing their feet a lot of the time. That's something that I personally, have brought in this year, and just still gaining distance and direction toward our target and trying to get rid of the ball efficiently. I think, Anthony, you brought it up, and just getting rid of the baseball, getting the ball to your cutoff man. And Brooks, you said it too, like, get the ball in there. If we get the ball in, allows the infielders to make their decision. And on average, I think it's major league outfielders get rid of the ball in 1.0 to 1.1 seconds. And it doesn't take time. You can get rid of the ball efficiently, unless you have that guy that has a plus arm that's going to throw the ball from the track to third base on a fly. Cutting it down from 1.5 to 1.1 is cutting out 15 feet or so of running, in my approximation. That's the difference between getting a guy out, or on the other side, going back to our initial point of keeping a guy off of second base. I also think that there's some commonalities as well too in creating hops. And we have a lot more time out there to create hops a lot of the time, and still getting a good hop like an infielder would. But as Brooks, you said, we still want our guys to be aggressive. And we're just waiting back there and waiting for the baseball. I see that all the time. We practice our do or dies almost every day at Maine, and the guys joke around about how often we practice it. But it's something that, when that play comes up, I want the guys to be aggressive. If we're never aggressive to the baseball in practice, and that game, that situation comes up in game, we're not going to be aggressive or comfortable or in control of our movements to make that play. So I want to kind of segue that into what we're going to talk about outfield here. What are some teaching points? It could be philosophy, it could be approach, it could be mechanical or decision-making, that you want your outfielders to know. And we've hit on some of these already, but what are some that you believe in, and what are some ways that you teach your guys? Ant, you want to start us?
Yeah. So something we're really worrying about is just like that first step. We feel like the first step is the most important. So we do a lot of like quarterback type drills. We do bare hand and then we get our glove on. We feel like the bare hand's an extension of the glove. And then we do a lot of ground ball work, making sure our bodies are behind the ball, because as an outfielder, I feel you're never going to feel the ball like an infielder per se. So we do a lot of we get them started on the fence. They run in, you hit slow roll ground ball at them. They're working on keeping their glove down. They're keeping their chest, or as much of their chest as they can behind the ball. But that's a lot of the stuff that we kind of hit on.
Awesome. Brooks, what do you got to piggy off of that?
Yeah, that's great stuff. I like to keep it simple for our guys, and I kind of touched on it in the last one. I saw it actually at the convention. Scott Laverty from Chapman, I thought it was great, kind of 3 points for his outfielders. It's secure the baseball, throw accurately, and take good routes. If you have to sum it all up, I think those three are super important. And ways that we do it and kind of hold them accountable. We talked about it with infielders. I think it's equally as important for outfielders in catch play. You see a lot of outfield guys, especially younger guys, who come in and are just kind of airing it out, and there's really no purpose to their catch their throwing program. And that's something we spend a lot of time in the fall with, to carry it over to the spring. So they'll go through their throwing program, and it's a lot like infielders where it's a lot of live situations, whether it's, we're working on long hops, as much as even coming in and working on one hops with a little bit of touch from a shorter distance. I love doing progressional stuff. Whether it's a ball in a gap off of the wall, we'll spend time a little closer to the wall, and we'll just work on picking it up, digging it into the ground, and getting our legs under us. Then we'll transition. It'll be a short fungo off the wall. They'll go through the same thing with a short throw, and then we'll kind of put the whole thing in a live game-like situation with a runner and kind of air it out. I think it's important to progressively get into that. But yeah, throwing accurately, we do a lot of stuff with ball in the glove. Guys will run to a spot and have to get their feet under them. I think footwork's just as important in the outfield as it is in the infield in terms of throwing accurately. Unfortunately, and I tell this to our guys all the time, unfortunately, our throws in the outfield are only judged on how the next guy receives it, whether it's the infield cut guy, whether it's the tandem guy, or even, if I'm airing it out, if it's going, the third guy's going first to third and I'm airing it out. If I short hop the third baseman and he can't make a play on it, it doesn't matter if I've got the strongest arm in the outfield. My throw is going to be judged. I didn't put him in a good position to execute the play. So sometimes it's a thankless job in the outfield. Sometimes, so we're not really looking to show off arm strength all too much as put the guy who's going to receive the ball next, whether it's the tag guy or the cut guy, in the best position to move forward with the play after that.
Love it. A lot of great points right there. Burke, what do you got?
Yeah, Brooks, that was great. I think kind of just building off of it is three things that, you secure the ball, run good routes, make good throws. Those are basically what wing outfields do. The teaching points that we kind of go through is always try to see the top of the baseball. So you're going back on a ball, make sure you see the top of it. If you can't see the top of it, you got more work to do. Guys on those super high fly balls where it's very easy to get caught going too far in on. Next thing you know, it's over your head, you're on your heels. And then obviously long hop, no hop is a big thing for us, right? Accurate, long hop, no hop. And hit a really good point on the throwing program. We do it every day with coming in and still doing one hops. So you're further out, you're doing your pull down to one hop. But when we start working in, we want guys to have a little bit of touch, because there are going to be situations where you just have to get that ball into second base with no cut, and it's going to be much easier. Just hit them on a nice, easy one hop. So I think those are all great points.
No, and I love what you guys are both talking about the throwing program. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but in looking at plays that we made, the year prior, last year, in times that we threw guys out, and times that we threw guys out this year as well too. And it doesn't happen a ton. And as Brooks, you said, like, it's dependent on what the infielder does, right? And many of the times that we threw a guy out from the outfield, it was a long hop, or it was a ball that was thrown through the cutoff man's head that he was able to then redirect the baseball. And if we're doing that and doing that consistently, a lot of the time, we're also keeping the runner off of second base. So that's one thing that I've talked about with our outfielders this year. But in expanding on the throwing program, in addition to practicing our long hops every day and building that into our catch play, what I did this year is I had them start off and do basically like a build-up program for pitchers, as far as plyos go, Jaegers go, rolling out every single day. And the feedback I got from our guys was tremendous. I mean, many of them said that their arms never felt better. A lot of the arm paths shortened up a whole lot, as opposed to the old school, just get long and try and get more arm into it. Their arms became more efficient. They were getting rid of the ball a lot quicker. So we started to see some changes there, and guys were feeling really good. So that was something that we kind of threw in this year that I was really excited about. And I think, you have all these great throwing programs that pitchers do every day. And if it's good enough for them, to some degree, in some sort of variation, I think it could help some of our position players as well too, in terms of staying healthy and in terms of building arm strength and building it in a healthy environment. But other little points, and we've talked a little bit about this, but sprinting to the spot, being able to get to the spot consistently. And Anthony, you mentioned that right off the bat earlier in this conversation of trying to get behind the baseball, and also being comfortable being uncomfortable. Those balls that are hit way over our head that we gotta have some feel for and take our eyes off the baseball for a step or two and then pick the ball back up and not be afraid to do that. I think that there's a lot of value in that, and that's something that we practice frequently with blind reads, with machine work, and in some variations, and also getting comfortable around the fence. You see some of the best teams in the country, and apart from being incredibly athletic, they're very comfortable around the fence, and we run into those plays 6 to 8% of the year. We'll run into them. So it doesn't happen a ton, but you're talking about an extra base hit at the very least. If that ball hits off the wall, you're talking about at least 180 feet per runner. So if we get comfortable out there and we can make, a good play out there every now and again, that can really change the course of a game. So that's something that we go over a lot with our guys as well too. Do you guys have anything that you'd like to, before we open it up to Q&A, as far as outfield play goes, or even if you want to circle back to either infield or hitting, is there anything that you guys would like to add before we open it up?
Oh, hit on a lot of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you guys for coming on. This has been great. Now I'm going to give those viewers that are here, especially Mr. Steve Atkins, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat. I'm going to give you guys a minute right now to throw up any questions, and we'll kind of, pick and choose who wants to answer it, whoever jumps in first. And these questions could be about anything. They could be about infield. They could be about outfield. They could be about catching. They could be about preparation. As a defender, they could be about offensive stuff as well too. So. Okay. What are some good daily drills for youth catchers? Who wants to take that?
I think I'll jump in to start. Any kind of barehanded receiving work. Some barehanded daily receiving work where they're in their crouch, they're in their receiving slot, and just making sure that their elbows staying down and they're receiving the ball well. I think that's a big thing for youth catchers, is just getting them comfortable and taking that glove off.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's a big thing. And receiving being number one, blocking being number two, just to kind of add to that from a blocking standpoint. And I see a lot of youth catchers struggle with blocking a lot of the times. And some of the time comes from just fear itself when you're real young, so starting off with some tennis balls and working on tennis ball blocks, starting in different stances and mixing in blocks from there as well too is something to mix in for you young guys. Okay, next question from John Davis. How would someone get better at timing when taking ground balls?
I'll hop in on this one. I really think taking ground balls with just turfs on, especially on a natural surface, I think that's extremely helpful. Like I mentioned before, I think it's a good way to kind of gauge if you're moving too fast or too slow. You'll see guys who kind of look like they're on ice skates if they're moving a little too quick. But it gives them an opportunity to, work around the ball. You can put some cones out to get them working around and moving their body toward first. But definitely with the turfs on, I think it's kind of gets you under control. It'll better time you up to put you in a good position to throw.
I love it. And that keeps your feet underneath you too. One thing that I've done in the past, I stole this from Ryan Wheeler over at St. Joe's, is either a skip variation or a high knees variation, throwing in something where we're just working on our rhythm and keeping our feet underneath us. That helps a lot. And Burke, I don't want to steal your thunder. You mentioned the Vizquel drill the other day. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
So the Vizquel drill is kind of a build-up drill that we do with the roll ball series. And it's a pedestal drill, so you'll stand on your right leg if you are a right-handed thrower. And your job is basically just a single hop on that right leg and forcing that left leg when it comes down, that left foot comes down, that it's on top of the baseball. If you kind of like just Google like Vizquel taking ground balls, you'll see him kind of do it on some ground balls where it's just like routine and he just kind of gives this like one little right hop and boom, everything's on time. So I think that's a really good drill of just like testing yourself and your space. And it's tough, believe it or not. It like seems super simple, but the first couple of times you do it, it's really difficult. We had an infielder at Maine who, in my opinion, was one of the best second basemen in the country defensively, and Caleb Curbs. And man, when he first did that drill, that was tough. It was tough to watch, but he got it pretty good. But yeah, I mean, another thing to just like, you want to get better timing at ground balls.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing, you can't substitute a good fungo. You just can't. Like, get out there and take ground balls.
Absolutely.
I agree with Conor 100%. I mean, even our guys, you know, we'll do drill stuff and guys will not even want just to do drills. They'll just want reps. And, you know, something I think that will really help clean up somebody being on time is just even when you're taking a fungo, it's just if the fungo hitter's swinging and missing, just to kind of see where your body's following, and where your chest is kind of following. I mean, it's just a simple thing like that where you can just kind of see where your body's going to be at.
Love that. That's really good. It's really good. As an infielder, how much time should we spend a week on agility and conditioning? So one thing that we did with our guys to answer this, just from a personal standpoint, is this year our head coach, Nick Durba, had all of our guys do ladder work a lot, just for feeling their feet underneath them and just for, building that in as far as agility goes on a daily basis. We did that all fall with our guys. So I think it's something that's definitely undervalued, and I think it's something that's very important. Especially for you younger guys, is building that in, because if you're capable to get to more baseballs, most of the time it relates to angles anyway, right? But if you're more agile, it's going to give you a lot more room for error. It's going to give you a lot more room to be able to make that last second decision to create a hop with your feet. So being more agile, and just being quicker as you move around as an infielder, I think is super important. Okay. Steve Atkins, love it. Coming in hot. Awesome stuff, guys. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on how outfield defense is evaluated nowadays with TrackMan, StatCast, and the pros. And how do we bridge the gap in evaluating our outfielders when we don't have the defensive data that pros do?
That's an awesome question. Not surprised coming out of you, Steve. But we don't have obviously the route running efficiency statistic, right? Like that's not there. So I think where we bridge the gap in evaluating them, the defensive data goes back to, for us personally, is being able to see some video. I think everybody has synergy at this point. So you can kind of go back and see who's running good routes. Maybe our eyes are lying to us here and there. But I think good old video is a really good way for us to judge that.
I agree with that. In the fall, I looked through last year of every ball our outfielders took, and just looking at their routes to the ball and then starting to create awareness of that. So in doing so, like downloading the film, and then you could use any type of application where you could draw on it, or just show guys like how direct they were. I think is a big thing, and then kind of take that into our drill work, and I think that's important. I also think that from a teaching standpoint, you're talking about shoulder alignment a lot of the time. You're talking about first step efficiency. We can't track exactly, as you were saying, Burke, how efficient our route is, but we can use video. And even if you don't have synergy, if you're taking video in practice, if a student assistant is taking video, or if you have somebody on the side taking video, then you can go back and go over that with your outfielders. Hey, you took a real good route here. and maybe you didn't make the play, and just because you didn't make the play doesn't mean it was a bad process to get there. Or, hey, you didn't take a good route here. I think is really important to give feedback to your guys.
Yeah, if I could just touch on that for a second. You're mentioning about the video and synergy. It's definitely, a good thing to have. I think it's also important, Marsh, you were touching on it a little bit, sometimes showing the guys what it looks like, I think could be a big difference. We did it this year with a guy for even as small as bunting for him. He was struggling a little bit, and just seeing yourself on video, I think goes a long way. Not that you have to spend a ton of time with it, but it could be as much as one little clip that it might click for the guy. He might see, he might feel something that's different than what he'll see, and it might click for him where he can make the adjustment.
I love that. I mean, so often we see video as a hitting coach or as a hitter. We see video of our swing. We see video of us as on pitchers on the mound. But, there's many opportunities to see video of infielders, of outfielders, of catchers as well, too. So I think that's a great point there, Brooksy.
Yeah, I definitely think the use of video is underrated for defense. We have a lot of guys that you're like, oh, well, you're hitting like feel versus real. Like, this is what you're feeling, but this is what really is happening. Mm-hmm. Defensively, it's the same thing. Anytime your body is moving, you're going to have different feels for what's actually going on.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on today. Burke, always a pleasure, man. Brooksy, you too. Anthony, thank you so much, man. I know I got better. I know I learned something from being here today, and I really appreciate it. For those that spent the last hour or so with us watching this, thank you for watching. For those that check this out on YouTube, thank you for checking it out. Again, I'll have this up this weekend, and I will be sending out the link on social media as well as via email to all those that have requested it. So thank you again so much for coming on, and I'm looking forward to getting back together and doing something along these lines again soon with all of you. Hopefully we'll be getting back on the baseball field at some point soon. All right.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Have a good one, guys.